As the PC gaming community hobbles nervously into March 2025, already limping with pain, agitated and flinching at the slightest sudden noise or movement, we reflect on the first couple of the months of this year being, shall we say, less than ideal. NVIDIA 50 series launches thus far did not live up to expectations, and perhaps turned out worse than even the most pessimistic might have predicted, which is why the bar is set so low for AMD's upcoming RX 9070 and 9070 XT, which will cost $550 and $600 respectively per AMD's third announcement of the RX 9000 series this year, which took place on Friday. $600 is somehow not terrible, though there's certainly room for scrutiny, but at this point the drought of reasonable GPU deals in the mid-range has left PC gamers so parched they'll lap up whatever trickles down from those who control the flow. And NVIDIA's not dead yet either. With the 5070 imminent, this week should see a bitter clash between GPUs in the upper $500 range with back-to-back launches. So let's leave winter's disappointments behind us, because spring is coming, and you can too, on this week's Tech News.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by Thermaltake's TR100 mini tower case and travel trunk. The TR100 is a diminutive but full-featured dual-chamber chassis with a surprisingly roomy interior for high-end PC builds, available in a variety of colors with support for up to 360mm GPUs and a 280mm AIO radiator on top. The modular design means side panels are all removable for cable management, and upgrades include an optional LCD panel or the travel trunk to easily take your TR100 gaming PC setup on the go. For more on the TR100 mini tower case from Thermaltake, check out my build or click the sponsor link in the video description. Let's start with a quick recap of AMD's RX 9000 series reveal, which went live Friday morning. After a bunch of yapping about AMD's and Radeon's history and the progress of the RDNA architecture and FidelityFX super resolution over the years, they got to the good stuff like 23 minutes in. Specs and pricing. For $550, the RX 9070 non-XT has 56 compute units, 16 gigs of GDDR6 VRAM, and a 2520 MHz boost clock with a 220 watt board power rating. For $600, the RX 9070 XT has 64 compute units, also 16 gigs of GDDR6 VRAM, and a 2970 MHz boost clock with a 304 watt board power rating. Both go up for sale March 6th. There's only a $50 price gap between the cards, but per AMD's performance charts, the 9070 is about 20% faster than a 7900 GRE, while the 9070 XT is more like 40% ahead. So the XT is definitely looking like the better value comparatively, which perhaps was AMD's intent, though this is kind of the opposite of how companies usually price things. Sentiment seems to be generally positive, if not overly enthusiastic, about the $600 price for the XT, but many believe the 9070 non-XT needs to drop to $500 for it to be a good value. All this is based on AMD's performance charts though, of course, which should be taken with some skepticism until verified by independent reviews, but it was appreciated that AMD shared native performance comparisons separated by ray tracing and non-ray tracing titles without the addition of upscaling techniques like DLSS or FSR, thankfully avoiding NVIDIA's bad faith blunder of comparing their 50 series with multi-frame generation to their 40 series without it, that they did back in January. AMD also threw in these slides comparing the 9070 XT directly to the RTX 5070 Ti. Bold, showing it to be trailing by only -2%. At $600 for the 9070 XT versus $750 supposedly for the 5070 Ti, or a more accurate street price of $1,200 plus right now, the 9070 looks like a drastically better value. If it can truly strike that close to the RTX 5070 Ti and 4080 Super range for $600, I'm willing to bet it's gonna get positive reviews. And then AMD was like, and look, if you overclock the 9070 XT, then it wins by 2%. Specifically, they're referring to partner models here that will have a 340 watt board power rating, but honestly, this part felt a little gimmicky since the 5070 Ti has overclocked board partner cards too. Still, there is undeniable optimism for the RX 9000 series, and for reasons beyond just really wanting to have an alternative to NVIDIA's current RTX 50 series snafu. Ray tracing is expected to take a big leap this gen, which probably won't catch AMD up to NVIDIA, but should narrow the gap. FSR 4 demos at CES looked impressive versus prior generations, and upscaling is another area that AMD needs to gain ground, although since FSR 4 uses machine learning, it has a hardware requirement, so it will only work with 9000 series GPUs and newer. It has also been said that RX 9070 stock already started to arrive at retailers back in late December and January, so we're cautiously optimistic that there will be a lot more of these GPUs on offer than what NVIDIA eked out for the 50 series launches thus far. You might even be able to buy one at MSRP. So we've made it past one hurdle. The pricing isn't as awful as it could have been, and early performance and inventory expectations are looking positive too. And if that's not enough, AMD was keen to highlight perhaps the most vital feature of the 9070 and 9070 XT, standard 8-pin power connectors. So the week's timeline is looking something like this, according to rumors. NVIDIA 5070 reviews, Tuesday the 4th. 5070s go up for sale, and RX 9070 and 9070 XT reviews go up Wednesday the 5th, and RX 9070 and 9070 XTs go up for sale Thursday the 6th. Quite a week. As shown in my Build Fix poll this week though, you guys seem not super enthusiastic for the RTX 5070 launch because, let's face it, NVIDIA fooled us once, twice, 3 times, not gonna get fooled again. But let me see if I can talk you out of that perspective. See, what NVIDIA was really doing, allegedly, with the 5090 and 80 and 70 Ti was engaging in scarcity marketing, per this person on Twitter. Hype your product up, slow roll the distribution of said product, frenzied shortage, scalper pricing, and wow, now look how valuable your GPUs have become. NVIDIA wins, and we should all be happy about it. Thankfully though, now that NVIDIA has established its high-end GPUs as status symbols, luxury bangles for the affluent to flaunt so the hoi polloi can look on in jealous awe, they've deigned to turn their eye towards those less fortunate. And GeForce RTX 50 GPUs from the 60 class and 70 class lineup will come with high inventory levels, because apparently GPU supply is just like a faucet that NVIDIA can turn on and off when they notice that our water dish has gone dry. So good news, prospective 5070 buyers, you might actually be able to buy one for $550. Now just cross your fingers that the RX 9070s don't make the 5070 look bad, and that your 12v2x6 connector doesn't melt, and don't plan on playing any classic games that need PhysX support. Watch out for black screen problems, make sure to turn on 4x multi-frame generation so you can pretend it's faster than a 4090, and double check that all your ROPs are there, because oops, a select few RTX 50 series GPUs are just missing some. Speaking of those pesky missing ROPs, as reported last week, what a pain in the butt when your new GPU just doesn't even ship with the full specs that were promised. NVIDIA is taking this one seriously too, given their quick public statement last weekend. On Saturday, they told The Verge that 0.5% of GeForce RTX 5090, 5090D, and 5070 Ti's have one fewer ROP than specified. Then on Tuesday, since multiple 5080s were also reported to have the same issue, they were like, oh yeah, the 5082. Place your bets now on whether or not you think this will also impact 5070s. Frustratingly, but in typical NVIDIA PR fashion, they characterized the defect as one fewer ROP instead of 8, because on spec sheets you put higher numbers, but when putting out PR fires, you use smaller ones. NVIDIA's solution is also a frustrating contact your board manufacturer for a replacement, because board partners are so flush with replacement GPUs to send out right now. And also they are so well known for their quick RMA service and fast 2 to 3 week turnaround time. I'm sure at least a few affected gamers will just decide to live with the 4 to 6% performance loss, but that just kinda sucks. Oh hey, I just realized that I still have a lot of wrench barks to mend, so let's plow through the rest of the news tech briefs style. One of those 50 series upgrades that NVIDIA must have forgotten to mention was that they dropped 32-bit PhysX support, along with 32-bit CUDA application support in general, meaning a bunch of older titles that rely on the feature now run like crap. It's a pretty decent list of games, but legacy gamers with 50 series GPUs do have options. Suffer through the god-awful frame rates while running PhysX on your CPU, or just add another dedicated GPU to your system to run PhysX, which somewhat ironically is how PhysX worked back when it was first introduced, and they were discrete cards. Redditor Gerubedo did just that with an RTX 3050 and RTX 5090 combo, and performance went from unplayable 12 FPS, 30 to 60 FPS, up to 122 FPS. 171 FPS, 157 FPS, even 390 frames per second in Batman Arkham Asylum. You too can get full performance out of your 5090 with this one simple trick. Speaking of great news for RTX 50 owners, those black screen issues that have popped up sporadically apparently can be fixed, and you don't even need your GPU vendor to issue a vbios update. As reported on the NVIDIA subreddit and verified by forum rep Pidge2K, MSI's gaming Trio 5090 had a vbios update issued that corrects the problem. But a vbios update isn't quite as easy as a driver install for less technical gamers, so thankfully NVIDIA's 572.60 driver update issued Thursday apparently does the same thing. Various black screen issues listed under general bug fixes. Too bad they can't put ROPs back this way too. Last week when AMD briefed the press on the RX 9070s, someone asked about the power connector. Could a board partner opt for NVIDIA's much maligned 12v2x6 connector instead of an 8-pin PCI Express for a 9070 or 9070 XT? AMD said yes. Radeon doesn't restrict board partners' options in that way, although NVIDIA clearly mandates the 12-pin 12v2x6 connector be used for their cards. I sensed some chuckles going around the conference call after that question though, because honestly, what board partner in their right mind would opt to use 12v2x6 if they had an alternative, given current public sentiment about those melting problems? Well, Sapphire. Sapphire made a 9070 XT with 12v2x6 power. Sapphire, I don't care if your RX 9070 XT Nitro Plus has a magnetic backplate that hides the cable in an aesthetically pleasing fashion. It's still there. That cover just means I won't be able to see it smoking and melting. This was a bad idea. Right, we've talked a lot about AMD and NVIDIA today, but what about Intel? How are things going over there? It seems the $100 billion fab they're building in Ohio that was supposed to open this year in 2025 is now pushed back to 2030, with a second and third phase rolling out in 2031 and 2032. I think that's just in time for that meteor to hit us. This will help Intel delay some of those fab building expenses, which should help them on the financial side of things. But I must say, Intel, I was led to believe that all your problems were Pat Gelsinger's fault, and ousting him would solve those problems. I feel like you guys might not have been 100% forthright with us about how that played out. I'm going to assume that you'll be sending us all written apologies, but in lieu of that, you could just make your next generation of CPUs not suck. And that is all for tech news. There you have it, guys. Tech news for the week. And if you liked it, click that like button or leave me a comment down below. While you're down there, all of the articles I talked about today are linked in the video's description if you're interested. And you can also check out my store at paulshardware.net for high quality merchandise, t-shirts, hoodies, beer sets, and more. Subscribing to my channel is always a good call too. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next week.